My name's Jim Serpico, and this... Should I start with my name, or should I start with this is Bread for the People? Do you like it like this? Welcome to Bread, or do you like it like this? Welcome. Ready? Welcome to Bread for the People. Mine... Is there a script? All right, let's do it. I'm here with Malcom Reed. Malcom has a website called How to Barbecue Right. Malcom has a YouTube channel, How to Barbecue Right. Instagram, Facebook, podcast, How to Barbecue Right. He is the man when it comes to barbecue. So I really appreciate you doing this, man.
Hey, no problem. That's quite an introduction there. I've never had it done that way, but yeah, I tried. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but it's our way of doing things. So
I think you're doing it right, man. I went back to do some research on you, and I've seen the evolution. I've seen the evolution of Malcom Reed in terms of podcasting, in terms of video production. I know that I was watching some early 2008 videos this morning, and it seems like the sound was recorded right off the camera. It was pre-backdrop. Now you have the How to Barbecue Right backdrop. But I'm fascinated with what you do, Malcom. I'm a bread maker. I'm a television producer, and I've taken my hobby of bread making to the next level, and I'm doing farmers markets with the bread. I'm trying to develop food programming on television and starting to pitch television shows. I am a hobbyist smoker. I have a Weber Smoky Mountain 18-inch that I've been using for about 4 years. And I do love it. I do love it and appreciate what you do.
That's a great place to start out. I've sent a lot of people to that Weber Smoky Mountain. People get interested. People get interested in smoking or grilling, and they want to know what to learn on that won't break the bank. And that's a great, the Weber. Weber's been making awesome barbecue grills for years. Since early 50s, I think. And then, so their smokers are just as good as their grills. They're a lot of light. You can just set it up for low and slow cooking.
Exactly. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I like the idea of working with charcoal and not having the natural gas going. I think natural gas smoking is also great, but to be able to control and learn about temperature and trying to keep that thing consistent throughout something that could take anywhere from 4 to 15 hours, it's kind of like the manual version of smoking meat, and I kind of like it.
That's where the skill comes in, and you're right. You have to learn that. You can watch all the videos you want. You can read about it all you want, but until you actually get out there and you light a fire and you learn how the air flows through the pit you're using, how to control that heat, how to smoke something for long periods of time, it takes some skill to acquire. And that's what's fun about it to me. That's what got me into all this. Barbecue was my hobby too. I did start out cooking competitions, and we learned as we go. We weren't, I wasn't trained as a child or went to school for it. We just learned. I was interested in it, and it wasn't until years later that it kind of turned into a business for me when I decided to start sharing, recipes and things I'm cooking with other people, because so many people were interested in cooking better barbecue in their backyards.
Absolutely. And I have noticed, over the past 8 years, it's become a thing everywhere in the country. It's not just the certain pockets that are known for barbecuing. I live in Long Island, New York, and I remember when I got into this, I was probably 2 years later than some other people, but it was a thing. Everyone was starting to smoke in their yards and doing dry rubs, which is we're not known for our dry rub smoking here, but it's pretty common now. It's pretty common.
When I first started out, it did to us. The internet wasn't a big thing, and people weren't sharing it all. So I just thought it was something we did down here in the South. I had no idea that people all over were getting into it. And now, it's not just the United States. We get questions constantly, and people that are just into cooking barbecue in other countries across the world. So it's amazing how people are just falling in love and wanting to cook better food like that at home.
No, that's great, man. So I'm a naturally curious person. I like to think my listeners are curious. I would like to cover a couple of things. I would like to thread this interview talking about your journey, kind of how you got to the point of deciding. I know you mentioned it and touched upon it now, but growing up, was your family into smoking? Is it something this type of cooking that you grew up with and were hands-on?
So I guess we kind of took it for granted, but every major holiday seemed like, or my dad running a barbecue pit, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day. This is where we spent our summers, going to the lake, cooking barbecue, things like that. It wasn't like we set out to make these, elaborate recipes or anything like that. It was just always there. I mean, we always had ribs. We always had pulled pork. We had stuff like that. Being from the Memphis area, pulled pork was, pork barbecue was king. We did do a lot of beef back then. But as I got older, growing up, there's the World Championship Pork Cooking Contest is in Memphis, Tennessee, called Memphis in May. And that was, that was something that was, it was a big deal for us growing up to go to Memphis in May every year. It was, it was kind of the kickoff of the summer. School was getting out. Everybody went down to the banks of the river and had a big barbecue. And, growing up in a town right outside of Memphis, all the little towns had their own festivals, and they were all barbecue driven too. So I kind of grew up with it. And as I got old enough, me and my buddies, started making our own team and doing just what our fathers and dads, and uncles and all that were doing, hanging out and having a good time. It's kind of like tailgating. We're just doing it to see who can cook better barbecue. And that's what got me hooked on it.
That's what I love about it. And I was talking to my son. My son's 18. I told him I was doing this interview, and I showed him some of the videos. It's like, I know him. I know Malcom, because he's very hands-on with things. And he could smoke on his own too. But one of the things we love about smoking is the communal aspect. It's like, takes a long time. I love hanging out there. I love the smell of it. I love having a beer. I love having my friends and family around while it's happening. And I remember the first time there were like 3 other friends of mine that had different types of smokers, and we put them in the pickup trucks, brought them over here, and we all did it throughout the night. And then we had a smoke out with all of our friends. We had about 18 families over, and we shared everything we cooked, and it was just so cool. That's one of the things I love about it.
That's what barbecue is to me, man. It's sharing with friends and family. You put in the hard work to stay up with it all night, whatever you're cooking, and it's just awesome to be able to share that and to see other people enjoy it, and the camaraderie, the fellowship, all that it brings to it. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than that. And I think there's just something primal that probably goes back to our ancestors years ago when they were gathering their food and cooking it over fire and sharing it with everybody that lived with them. That's kind of what we're doing, in a different way now.
Now, when you step it up to the level of competition, what I'm hearing is there's still a camaraderie with your team. And you guys love doing that, but there's a lot more at stake now.
Yeah. When you put money and trophies on the line, it changes a little bit. But, it is still, barbecue is still a brotherhood. I mean, all the guys that we compete against, I mean, it's very rare that you have any drama or any ill will or anything like that. They'll give you the shirt off their backs, except for those 1 or 2 hours during turn-in times when they're trying to beat you. But the rest of the time, we go back to socializing and having a beer, having a good time, because that's what it's all about, being out there and having a good time.
Okay. That's amazing on the one hand. But on another hand, I'm a little disappointed because I wanted to hear about some drama so we could develop this TV show about the competitive barbecue culture, the cutthroat.
I think when you see that, it is made for TV. Like, there's some great TV. There's some great shows out there about barbecue pitmasters, for one. You've probably heard of it. A lot of that drama they make up on there is for TV, because those guys are all friends. When they turn that camera off, everybody's buddy. They're helping each other and sharing and all that. But you gotta make it interesting, right?
Absolutely. But I'm thinking about scripted. We go scripted. We do a scripted, edgy, raw. Who knows? So you start doing the competitions at what? At college age? After high school?
I would say it was high school is when we first started. We had one of my friend's dads had the team Killer Hogs before us, and it was him and his buddies from a hunting camp, and they were doing a local contest, and they just asked us if we wanted to come hang out and help and learn. And so we said, yeah. So we go to college, and, we'd come back, and it comes time, to have the contest again another year or 2 later. We said, we asked him if we could do it on our own. They had done retired or got tired of spending the money doing it. And he's like, sure. So they come out and kind of gave us a little guidance, but it was all us doing it. And we just kind of took it from there and kept it going. And that's been, probably 1990, 6, 7, something like that. It's been a long time ago.
That's the same team?
Yeah, same team. Well, it grew and then it fell off, and now it's primarily just me and my brother Waylon and my wife Rochelle. The other team members have gone on to do other stuff and out of barbecue and things like that, because we all had 9-to-5 jobs. This was just a hobby, just something we did for fun, and it was quite expensive. It's by the time you buy all the meat and all the supplies and the pits and everything that goes into it, it takes a pretty good bit to get into competition barbecue.
What was your 9-to-5 job?
Well, back then I was working at a casino as a bellhop, but that was when I was going to college. And then after I got out of college, I started working in commercial architecture, designing and drawing buildings, drafting, things like that. And the recession hit, I guess, 2008, and by about 2009, when the work ran out, I got laid off. And at that time, I had been doing our website a little bit because I'd gotten married, and my wife realized that we needed a website. That taught me into starting a newsletter where I was writing about barbecue and talking about it. And I told her that I wanted to try to do it full time. So I hadn't looked back since then.
And what about your drafting background? Has that come into play after you formally left drafting and architecture?
I haven't drawn anything
Okay.
since other than maybe some sketches for some outbuildings or something like that. But formally, no, I'm through architecting. I'd like to do it on the grill. I like to architect barbecue now on the grill.
Now, I know in baking, a lot of bakers pass down recipes and pass down information, and it sounds like that happens here. I have experienced friends of mine whose brother may make a rub and will not let anyone know the exact ingredients.
See,
is that where people draw the line?
Well, that was the way barbecue was forever. I mean, these were family secrets that were held close to the vest that just got passed down upon death a lot of times, They don't want to give out the secret family sauce or the secret family rub. But, so when I came out, I was searching. I consider myself a constant student of barbecue, and I was looking for those secrets back, in early 2000s, and you couldn't find a lot of it. There wasn't YouTube videos. There wasn't, we may have had some forums back then, but that was about the only place you got any knowledge. And so I decided, my wife helped me do this, that we were just going to share and give away all the secrets. And, and a lot of it was competition secrets or ways of doing things that helped us win trophies and checks. But we looked at it as if we, I could never cook this same thing the same every single time. And I'm sure that goes into baking too. It doesn't always turn out. So if I could share some good information with someone, they could cook better barbecue and beat me, that's great. Because we're preserving this, we're passing it on to the next generations or to other people, and we're sharing. And that was what it was really all about, was just sharing this knowledge, these ideas we're having, and the experiences that we're getting along the way in this barbecue journey.
Yeah. How does the weather and the humidity and the outside temperature affect the outcome? Like, you might be cooking the exact same thing you cooked 4 times or 100 times. I noticed there's a difference. I'm just curious. You have much more experience.
Oh, it definitely affects it. I mean, things cook different in the winter versus what they do in the summer. I mean, we've got heat, we've got humidity, we've got wind, air blowing through, keeping your fire. You're going to burn more fuel. You're going to have to choke it back. And a lot of that changes. Altitude's a big one that changes it. I learned that cooking up in the Black Hills of South Dakota. We went up to cook a hog, which normally would take us 18 to 20 hours. We're up there. We was taking 30 hours because we were at 9,500 feet above sea level. And it was that was the first time I'd ever had any experience with that. So there's a lot of those outside factors that you have no control of affect the way your barbecue cooks, just like it does with baking.
Were you surprised by that? Did you see that coming?
No, really. I mean, we were really taken back because, barbecue is one of those things. It does take time, so it's not super scientific. If you can make heat, if you can make a heat source and you can add wood to it and get it to smoke, and you've got time, well, you can cook something usually. But you don't really take into effect, what those other factors are doing to you. And I never. It's difficult because I give a lot of people advice, the advice I give is the experiences I've had and what I've learned along the way. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I call it how to barbecue right. But it's not necessarily there's no right or wrong way, if you're working at it yourself and trying to come up with a solution. I look at it. So I think the big thing is just to get out there and to make notes when you're cooking, to learn pay attention to to the time it's taking you to cook something to get done, to the temperature outside, what all conditions went into that outcome. That was what I started doing, and just trying to keep up and learn as I go. So, it's definitely a factor.
It's the same exact thing in bread baking, and it's exactly what I do. I sometimes talk about how it is all scientific and physics, but I didn't study that, and I fell into being lucky enough to capture the right situation in science that I didn't know I was capturing. And somehow it works for me, and I enjoy it. And some people are buying my products, so they enjoy it. So I guess it's working in some way.
That's right.
So you start doing the website and you do the newsletter, and all of a sudden people are subscribing at that point. It's catching on, and you're not making a living at it yet.
No, not at all. This was before we had, a rub on the market. Newsletters weren't paying any money. It was just, I guess it was my wife. She had an internet marketing background, but most of that is they're trying to sell products. And so she realized that, you have to have a customer base before you can sell them anything. And so we didn't ever know we were going to sell stuff. We just knew we wanted to build a following. And so that's what we started doing. I mean, we had early days, social media was MySpace. Sure, you've heard it. Remember that back in the day.
Of course.
And then Facebook came out. So we were on those, and it was really just a way to share what we were doing. We took a lot of pics. This was before video. We wrote a lot of recipes out, and we shared them. Well, then we had a company come along and wanted us to do some video work because they wanted to share it on their website. So they sent us a little flip camera, and it was going to record it all to the camera itself, and we were going to send it back to them or email it to them. Well, when we recorded all that stuff, video files were so huge you couldn't email them, and so we ended up having to ship them the camera. And so my wife figured out that there was this new website called YouTube that you could upload videos to, and if you uploaded them to it, you could share the link. And so that's what we did. We just did hours of footage, and we would share a link. There was we didn't have any video knowledge or editing knowledge or anything like that. That's why it was so raw. When you go back and look at those 2008 videos you mentioned earlier, it's just me in an old kitchen, with a little cheap camera that records audio to it. There's no separate tracks or anything. And that's how we learned. And so the first videos were a lot of competition driven stuff, but I realized quick that a lot of the questions that I was getting was about, how to cook ordinary stuff that you or I might be making for dinner or doing for a party or something like that. And so I realized that there was more of a demand for that stuff than there was just competition stuff. I mean, me and my friends were into competition stuff, but everybody else didn't even have an idea it existed. So I kind of went the backyard route, and that's when we decided to develop seasonings and sauces and all that. Because I was already doing that stuff for competition. I was making my own rubs on my kitchen table. I was mixing up sauce on the stovetop, and we realized once we had some people want to try some of those that I needed to go figure out how to bottle it, figure out how to get this stuff available for sale. And at first we had no money, so it wasn't like I didn't have a job. I got laid off. I had a little bit of severance. So I took that money and bought my first order of barbecue seasoning. And they brought this pallet of stuff to my house, and I was like, oh, great. What am I going to do with this? I said, I'll never sell it. It was like 500 pounds of bottled seasonings. And I said, I have no way of selling it. And so, now we're moving truckloads a week. So it took time, but it was a lot of fun. And the journey's been good along the way.
Yeah. So this stuff arrives at your home. You didn't have a real distribution plan.
It was YouTube videos and a website that my wife created and a PayPal account. That was all we had. And we did everything from making the videos, writing the newsletters, to packing orders, half a day, to, rain, sleet, snow, just like the post office. We were out in our garage. Our neighbors thought we were crazy because they would see us out there sweating in the summer, freezing in the winter, and we would set packages out for the postman every day.
I do the same thing. I started in the garage. Our neighbors thought we were crazy. Now, I ran into some issues with agencies that regulate this stuff. Did that ever happen to you? Was there anything that you didn't realize you needed to do what you were doing?
I'm sure there was. A lot of the licensing and insurance and stuff like that kind of fell on my co-packer at the time. And I think, it really depends on your local municipalities and what because all of our stuff was like FDA approved, and it wasn't like we were, opening stuff and adding to it or selling meat or anything like that. It was just prepackaged goods that we were reselling. So that was kind of how we got away with that. But I didn't know about business insurance. I didn't know about liability insurance. This was all stuff that, we didn't have the money for at the time anyway. So I looked at it as we just had kind of a guerrilla business that we were on the cusp, and they probably could have come and shut us down at any time back then. There was a time where I was mixing up rub on my kitchen table and selling it to people, a lot like these cottage industry stuff, to where, I wasn't going to the farmer's market, but I would have a dozen people say, hey, make me a pound of seasoning, and I would make it up, vacuum seal it up, and take it to them. So, but that's just what it took to get started. And we kind of had that mindset that we were going to make it work no matter what we had to do. And of course the bills pile up and you do what you can to scrape by. And the whole time we're trying to do barbecue contests, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from, trying to be successful and doing what I love doing. I probably retired back in 2008, but it doesn't feel like, we work so much now, and, I've got, a dozen or more employees working for me here at the shop. And so it's been quite a journey.
That's amazing. And you were consistent in terms of putting out content the whole way through, right?
Well, we knew we had to be, and we still do. Back then there wasn't a lot of people doing content like that. There was only a few of us, on YouTube, but we knew that, if you didn't put something out, it wasn't, we could see that it related to building that audience, building that brand was the key. A lot of people spend it on marketing. They buy, TV ads or print ads, or all this stuff. Well, we didn't have those dollars. So we used social media and we used YouTube. We used our newsletter as our marketing money, and it was all organic. It was sweat equity basically. And so we kind of did it a different way. People would always come at us and, how are you doing this without paying for advertisement or buying ads on, these different platforms and all that? We just never did it. We just said, we're going to work, and we're going to sit down every year and make us a timeline and figure out like what our social posts, what schedule we want to be on. And we still stick to those to this day. We have a schedule.
That's why at this point you're just under 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. Yeah. I would think collectively between the newsletter, YouTube, and all the other social platforms, you got to be hovering 3 million subscribers that listen to and read your content every single day and week.
I think our reach is about 3.5. We kind of have it. We have a little company that keeps up with all of your, the ways you put out media, and that's usually where we hover around. But it's constantly growing too. That's the great thing about it, And the big thing about YouTube was, and we realized this, that once you upload a video to YouTube, those old videos that have been out there, 10 plus years, they still get watched. The other social networks, it's harder to go back and watch stuff, but YouTube does a great job of cataloging and building your library for you, and still making it relatively easily to find. That's the big thing about YouTube.
That was the point of what my son was talking about. That's how he knows you. Like, when he literally said, when I search how to smoke ribs, this is the guy that comes up, and it's like a library of what to do. I do want to get into some of the recipes that I took note of. But before we do that, for people who are interested in this or getting into it from the beginning, could we talk about the tools that you need to start smoking at home?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing is you need a smoker. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. It doesn't have to be, one of these $5,000, fancy smokers or anything like that. You can do it with the homemade one. But that's the first thing you need is some kind of a grill or smoker that you can set up for a 2-zone fire that you can learn to manage the airflow in. And once you get that, of course, you need some decent meat thermometers so you can check the internal temperature of meat, because you don't want to get anybody sick. You want to make sure your food's done to the proper temperature. But you also, need a set of knives, probably. Basic equipment. Most people have all this stuff at their house already. They may not have the smoker. Yeah.
But you mentioned 2-zone fire, and I'm just thinking about I did see, and I want to talk about this, the smoked tomahawk, and you illustrate the 2-zone there. But on a Weber Smoky Mountain, is it 2 zones?
Well, you're indirect, because your fire is separated by a water pan or a deflector of some type, whether you put sand in it or gravel or whatever, or water. That creates really that 2-zone. Two zones more, I guess, if you don't have any kind of deflector, you keep your heat on one side and your meat on the other side. So you have a hot and a cool side to control temps. So that's really what a two zone is. But you can also hear it called indirect heat when you're not right over a live coal. If you took that water pan out of your Weber Smoky Mountain, ultimately it's kind of a grill at that point. And you can still cook on it once you learn how to manage a smaller fire. But if you build a big fire in there, man, it's going to burn everything up. That water pan helps keep those temperatures in that smoking zone. That's what it's for. So that's what, when you hear two zone or indirect heat, that's what it's talking about.
Okay, I got you there. Now, what about coal? Because when I first got into this, they were trying to sell me on hardwood lump charcoal. And then the more I started reading about it, people were like, no, man, don't go that way. It's harder to control. You're better off with the basic Kingsford briquettes. What do you think?
Well, there's a place for both of them. I've always used the hardwood lump for hot and fast cooking. Like if I'm grilling a steak, if I'm cooking something that's going to be, I'm wanting some high BTUs out of it, a lot of hot heat, and I'm not trying to maintain that fire for a long time, lump charcoal is great. You got a great flavor on it. It's real wood that they've turned into a coal product. They burn it down and turn it into that. So it's really natural. But charcoal briquettes are great because they give you lower BTUs, but you get longer burn time. So you can manage a fire over 8, 10, 12, even longer hours by setting your coals up right in a grill. So I find myself using both a lot of times, depending on what I'm cooking on. For a Weber Smoky Mountain, you could use either one. The one good thing about lump is, even though it burns hot, once you get the air controlled on it, you can actually put it out and reuse it. Briquettes absorb so much moisture in a grill that you light them once and you try to put them back out, they're just going to go to pieces when you try to relight them. If you've ever noticed that. It is wood. Oftentimes, it's a wood product, but they've got binders in it to help it stick together. A lot of times starch. Some companies, I don't know what they use, but there's all different things, but you really want to use a good, clean product that burns good. If you want a briquette, just know you're going to get longer burns at lower temps. If you're going to use lump, it's hot and fast, and you can put it out and reuse it multiple times. So that's why you see guys in these green eggs, drum smokers, Weber Smoky Mountain saying, oh, you got to run lump. It's because they might be cooking, chicken for a couple hours. They can shut the air off. The lump goes out. They can just relight it the next time, cook ribs. So, you get a little benefits on both.
Okay. And then digital probe. I love it. I love being inside the house, watching the receptor, looking at the temperature go until it gets to that stall. And I remember the beginning, it was like, is this ever going to rise? How long is this going to take for this temperature to go, man? Because could you talk about the stall and explain to people who don't know what that is?
Yeah. Well, you really see it in larger cuts of meat. And what it is, it's that point to where the moisture that's inside those muscle fibers in the meat is trying to escape. That's what the cooking process is, taking moisture out of meat. And so it's that ultimate point to where they're hanging on to it for as long as they can before they let it go, before all that collagen just breaks down and melts and it's mouth-watering, pull-apart tender. And so the stall seems like it takes forever because it does. And there's ways to get around it, wrapping it up in foil. People, you hear it called, and I know you've seen it, the Texas crutch or whatever.
That's what I do.
Yeah, it works. It helps you. Well, it holds all that heat in there. It helps that moisture hurry up and get hot enough to where it's going to come out. And that's why when you open that foil, there's all this juice in there that you've rendered out and all that, the moisture inside the meat, the fat breaking down.
The other thing I love about that, and I don't know if I'm right, but it seems to be the opportunity to put your honey or whatever, add a new flavor that kind of caramelizes on there.
Absolutely. And it helps you to keep from burning that too. If you use sugars along the way that are just openly exposed and heat, they'll over caramelize and burn on you quick. But you can add sweet stuff to your wrap because it kind of protects it and it helps it from over caramelizing too much. Now, another way to break through that stall is to raise the heat. At lower temperatures, when we're talking smoking temperatures anywhere from 225 to 250, 275, that's pretty low, though it takes meat stalls out longer. It hangs out in that stall period before it breaks that hump, and then it jumps rapidly at the end. But
Right.
when you cook at 300 degrees and plus, like 300, 350, 400 even, you're really, busting through that stall. It's not going to stall at all because it's such high heat on it. It just cooks the moisture right out of it. And that's what braising does, like in your oven. If you put a roast in your oven, you brown it and then put it in there, cover it up, and you crank the oven temp to 350 and let it hang out, that meat doesn't stall much at all. You can do it in 3 or 4 hours, where at 250, that would have took 8 to 10 hours.
So what you're saying is I could shovel bunch of charcoal in there as soon as I see it approaching the stall and try to heat it up to 300 or better, and it's going to bust through it.
It'll bust right through it, yeah. But what I have learned is a lot of times if you're raising that temperature, your meat needs to go a little higher internally, because a pork butt that's cooked at 225 degrees for 8 to 10 hours falls apart at like 195 internal. But if you've got that grill temperature up to over 300, it might take it to 210 degrees internal to fall apart. It's just the denaturing of the protein is different at different heat temps, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but I think I'm going to stick to, because when I see that 195, I'm ready to go. I don't know if I'm going to have the patience. I'm going to be like, what's wrong with this? It's 200. It's not falling off the bone.
Yeah. You just need to know that you may have to take it a little bit further. But that's where that meat probe thermometer comes in. When you can slide it in and the meat's super soft at those high temps, that's what I go by. I go by feel. The thermometer is important because it's a great gauge of where it's at, but you still got to learn to go by probe feel or skewer feel, whatever you want to poke in it to see how soft the meat is. That's a good indicator if it's done or not.
Right. Now, what about, I was watching you put your rub on a lot of different things you were making, and I noticed that you weren't using a binder for a lot of it. Eventually, I found some videos where you were using mustard or something, but typically, while I'm rubbing olive oil on certain things, I saw you were going completely dry.
So I do it different ways. It really depends on the kind of bark I want to make, or if I'm in a hurry or not, or just to show people that you don't have to use a binder. It works great. A binder works great. A lot of times you see me use yellow mustard, olive oil, peanut oil, maybe a spritz bottle with water just to add some moisture to it. Mayonnaise. I've used all different kinds of things. And it does work. I don't think you absolutely have to. I've cooked pork butts with just simple salt and pepper that have been just as good as something I put rub on. It just depends on what kind of bark or what kind of outer layer you're going for. I think a binder does give you a heavier bark because it makes more of that seasoning stick to it, so it gets a little thicker. In competitions, we usually always use a binder because we want a nice heavy bark on it on the outside. But if I'm eating at home, and I know I'm just going to chop this meat up and get it ready to serve, I don't really worry about if I put a binder on it or not because I'm just trying to get it done. So, it's kind of completely up to you if you use one or not. I don't think you would know, if one had been hit with the mustard binder for slab of ribs hatton. It would be very, very hard to pick them out because you don't get any flavor really from it. Maybe a heavier bark, but still it would be very hard for someone to know if you did or not.
That's cool. Now, what's a good starter recipe if someone wants to get into smoking and try it at home and they haven't done it much? What's a fail-safe, easy one to start with?
It doesn't get any easier than a pork butt if you can maintain temperatures. Now, if you're not comfortable with an 8 to 10 hour cook, keeping your fire steady for that, I would do a shorter cook on a piece of pork loin because it's a neutral canvas. You can usually get those big, almost 3-foot pork loins at your club stores or grocery stores for cheap. You can split them up into various size pieces where you've got, a 2 or 3 pound roast to start with that. And it doesn't have to cook as long. Whole chicken is another great one. That's what, it's inexpensive. You can play around with your flavors on it. Chicken's a neutral canvas when it comes to flavor too. You can try different injections. You can do brines. You can do different seasonings, but it cooks in a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours on a smoker. It's a great time.
I was going to ask you, I was watching the beer can chicken video, which I haven't tried, but I'd like to try it. It looks pretty simple, and the concept of the can is to give it some flavor and put some dry in there, but also provide moisture.
That's right. And I don't know if you get it. It does give you some flavor, some moisture. It could be apple juice in it, but I think really what it does is as that liquid heats up in the can, it gets hot. So it's radiating heat from inside the cavity of the bird. So you're cooking it from the outside with the heat from the smoker coming at it, and you're cooking it from the inside. So it cooks it more evenly through and through. That's why a lot of guys use the beer can chicken. I mean, it's just cool to have a half a can of beer in there, but it does make it set up. The appearance is nice on it. You get a nice skin all the way around, where if you laid it on its back, you're sacrificing the back half of that bird. But if it's standing up, it's just kind of suspended there. So you get that beautiful golden skin all the way around it. But I definitely recommend, whole chickens is a great one to learn on, pork loins. And if you're in the South, we eat a lot of smoked barbecue bologna. That's something new that a lot of people don't do, but it's really, really good, and you can't mess it up.
Smoked barbecue bologna.
That's right.
Talk to me about this a little. I mean, we do something here with in the oven with a kosher salami where we cross-hatch it and kind of almost make a blooming onion out of it.
That's exactly what we do with the bologna. We buy.
No way.
We buy. They call it a chub of bologna. You see them in 2.5, 3, 4, 5 pounds, however big a stick you want.
Yeah.
And we take the skin off the outside of it.
Yeah.
We cut the crosshatch in it, and then usually and put rub all in it. Work it inside the crevices and the cracks that you've made from your crosshatch. Lay it on the smoker, and it'll open up like a blooming onion.
That's what we do.
It doesn't take it long. And then you baste it with your barbecue sauce about the last 30 minutes, and it glazes the outside, and it looks beautiful. And then, of course, you slice it up. You can put it in more sauce if you want. What I like to do is have a hot grill and go ahead and treat it like a steak just to get some sear marks on the outside of each cut and sauce it a little more and serve it up on sandwich style. But, man, it's really good.
Are you familiar with mortadella?
Yes, that's like the real deal Italian bologna, right? The nice chunks of fat in it that you can see suspended in it,
and sometimes pistachio nuts.
Yes.
I wonder if I should bring that here to Long Island, man. That sounds like a cool idea.
Now I've never tried to smoke mortadella. That's a good idea.
I think so, man. Idea. I think that to me that's Italian bologna. I love that idea. We do the kosher salami with saucy Susan. So it's like a sweet duck sauce that caramelizes when you cook it. It doesn't take that long, and it's an amazing appetizer when you're having a party with people. Because you put toothpicks in it and you pull it right out. Oh, it's unbelievable.
That's kind of what we do with the bologna too. We cube it up sometimes and have it in a pan with like peppers and onions.
Yeah. All right. So now I want to see if you're willing to help me out. I want to do the smoked tomahawk ribeye here at my house, but I don't have the exact tools that you have in your video, but I'm thinking I have the tools that might make it work, and you tell me if I'm onto something. I've got the Weber Smoky Mountain. I've got a gas barbecue, and I've got a Gosney Rockbox pizza oven, which burns between 800 and 900 degrees. So I'm thinking the way to take your recipe and do my version with the tools I have would put the tomahawk steak, if I have to cut the bone, make it a little shorter, and sear it up in a skillet in the pizza oven. Is that how I could sear the outsides? Does that make sense to you?
Yes. What I would do first would be put it on that Smoky Mountain first. Let's do a reverse sear with it. You're gonna put your meat thermometer in the middle of it, the thickest part.
Okay.
Season it however you'd like, just like you would season a steak. If you want to put a little barbecue rub, you could on it, but really salt and pepper garlic's your friend on a big tomahawk. Start it out and take it to about 112 to 115 internal. Now, on your Smoky Mountain, if it's running about 225, 250, that's probably only going to be 20, 30 minutes. It's not going to be very long. Yeah, it's not going to be very long. Now, depending on how thick that tomahawk is, but if it's, 2 inches thick, you're looking at about 20, 30 minutes. But just watch your internal temperature. You don't want to overcook it here. You want to get it to where it's under rare. It's blue, like 112 to 115. Take it off. and then crank your heat up. Either the pizza oven would do great. I mean, you could, because you're going to get a super sear on it in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So you're going to, you're going to take that thermometer out. You're going to stick it in. You're going to sear it on one side. You're going to bring it out. I'd baste it really good with some butter, whatever you got. Flip it back over and stick it back in and do the other side and bring it out and check it. You want to make sure it's about 125 to 130 internal, but it's going to get there pretty quick. Once you start hitting it with that 800 degrees. I've done those before. I had it was a single grill called a meter. It was kind of along the same one. It's kind of like a salamander type grill that you could use in your backyard. And it did phenomenal job searing steaks like that. So we would always reverse sear them, bring them up, get some of that smoke going. You really get that good flavor in the meat. And then you want to get that awesome crust on the outside. It's really easy to do.
All right. That's one of the next one up for me. And then, well, there's 2 or 3 other things I want to talk to you about. One is I've always wanted to do a suckling pig. I don't know. Is it possible for me to do in the smoker I have?
I don't know. I don't think an 18-inch Smoky Mountain is going to be big enough. I've seen them kind of twisted and turned and put in a 22-inch grate, like a extra large Big Green Egg or the bigger Smoky Mountain. I've seen them fit, but I don't believe it's going to fit on the 18. It'd be. I don't think the bang for your buck's going to be there on that. You're going to be better off, doing some ribs and doing a pork butt, kind of splitting it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Until you get ready to step up to a little bit bigger grill,
well,
which is probably coming. The way I hear you talking, it's probably coming.
it probably is. My problem, I can only have so many hobbies. I'm trying to narrow down my hobbies because then I'm just a hobbyist and I'm not really an expert in anything. Couple other things. Pork belly, burnt ends. Are burnt ends always just pork belly?
That's a big argument. You get these barbecue purist guys that say burnt ends only from a brisket, only from Kansas City. When I went down to Texas and we were at a barbecue conference actually, and I went to a local barbecue joint and they had bacon burnt ends on the menu, and I was like, I've only seen, this has been years ago, I've only seen brisket burnt ends. So I ordered them and I talked to the pit master there, and he's like, yeah, I've been doing these. I buy a piece of bacon that's uncut and I cube them up and I smoke them till they're soft and I toss them in sauce and I call them burnt ends. And I said, you know what? I don't see why not. I mean, to me, it looks like a burnt end. It's kind of a faux burnt end, but so I came back and I did them with pork belly and I kind of cured them, did my own version of Heim's barbecue's recipe there, and it kind of blew up online. It started a craze, and that's when you had the guys come out and start saying it's not a burnt end if it doesn't come from brisket. But
right.
I don't have a problem with it. I call them. I mean, you could call them meat candy if you wanted to. It's these delicious little melt in your mouth morsels of barbecue pork. I mean,
right.
It's sweet like candy, and they got a little spicy kick from the rub. And if you haven't tried them, that's a must. You've got to absolutely try them.
I'm doing those, and that seems like a good one. You could do on almost anything. I could do it in my Smoky Mountain. You could do it on a gas grill.
You can. It's all about. I mean, first you got to get some. I cube them up, get some seasoning on them. You got to render them a little bit to set the outside, get some color on the outside of them, and then you put them in a pan at that point with some sugar. Some butter, some honey, whatever you want. If you want something spicy, like a spicy hot honey or pepper sauce. And then from there, you could go to the oven with them. It doesn't matter. It's just heat. You're just rendering them in the pan, getting them cooking, rendering all that fat down. And then once you get them to that point, you take them out of that sauce and just dry them out a little bit. Put them back on the smoker, put them back on the grill, stick them on a raised rack in your oven. Doesn't really matter. You've got the flavor from the initial part from the grill. That's where your smoke comes in. The rest of it's just heat to get them rendered down.
That's awesome. Now, the last thing I want to ask you, because I'm a bread maker, I want to make some heroes, some nice light bread that I could toast up. What do you got? What do you got for us? What can we do with it? What kind of meat combination?
Oh man. Let's see. So I know you've had like the Italian style pork sandwich where it's sliced thin with like pork loin or something like that.
Yes.
Do it with pulled pork. Use all of your Italian seasonings, your basils, your oreganos, your garlics. Treat that pork butt, salt and pepper. Don't put the barbecue rub to it. Cook that pork.
It's like a porchetta.
On the smoker. And then wrap it up, add everything you want to add to it, and pull it apart. And put that shredded pulled pork with some broccoli rabe that you've sauteed, and top it with some mozzarella, something like that, on that bread. And it's one of the finest sandwiches. It's an Italian pulled pork sandwich is what it is.
All right. I'm going to give that a go. That is awesome. Well, Malcom, this flew. I really appreciate you taking the time. It was a pleasure to meet you here, and you're killing it. I really love what you do, man. So congratulations. Congratulations.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim. It was a pleasure to meet you, man. And I wish you well with all the bread business coming up. And I hope you keep on smoking. That's the main thing. Fire up that pit outside.
We're doing it. I'm going to do it this weekend. This episode was produced by Miles. This episode was edited by Brock Higley. His real name, you know that? He's going to edit it. He's going to hear this. I love that. He sounds like an action star or something. If you have an idea for an episode or a bread adjacent story, send me an email at breadforthepeoplepod@gmail.com.